This lovely manhwa is titled How to Save the Time-Limited Young Master. If you love stories like this, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next episode. Will you save a psychopath who has a limited time to live? Yeah or nah? Anyway, that's the situation Heleis is in. Heleis visited the young master and said she was glad he was feeling better. Genon laughed while sitting on the bed, a very soft expression on his face. He told her she was really kind to come and see him. When he noticed how sad she looked, he called out to her and asked if she was all right, or if something had happened. She forced a smile and said she was just happy to see that he was recovering faster than she thought. She then brought out a flower bouquet and handed it to him, saying it was a gift. Genon held it with a smile and asked if today was some kind of special occasion. Heleis's expression darkened again. She told him she had come to say goodbye. Genon froze at once. He got up from the bed and walked toward her, asking what she meant. She begged him to calm down, but he stepped closer and said he was calm, though nothing about him looked calm. Heleis finally opened up. She said she had thought everything through and truly believed it was time for her to walk her own path. "I can't stay here forever as your companion," she said. Genon's expression turned dark. He asked if she really thought his uncle would let her leave after she saved him, the eldest of the Lanialic family. He told her clearly that if she left his side, she would eventually die. Heleis held herself together and said she had enough strength to protect herself. Genon shouted back, saying her strength was not something she could control whenever she wanted. Heleis shouted back at him, asking what he expected her to do. "How can you say such a thing? Whose fault do you think this is?" Her fists tightly clenched in anger. Genon's expression softened. He told her he could protect her. All she had to do was stay by his side. He gently grabbed her hands, trying to convince her in a soft, almost romantic way. She was reincarnated into this novel, and at first she thought she would be a minor or ordinary character just like everyone else. But things did not turn out that way. The person she reincarnated as was Heleis Lorca, the only daughter of Viscount Lorca, a man with vast wealth. Heleis was showered with love by her parents and lived a cherished life in a privileged environment. Life was peaceful, as there was no conniving villainess to bully her and no tyrannical head of the family to control her. Since there was no romance with the main lead, it meant she was only a side character in this world, or so she believed. That was exactly how she thought until everything changed that very day. Her father suddenly called out to her from downstairs. "Father, what's the matter?" she asked calmly. He smiled and asked if she would like to talk for a bit. The moment she saw that gentle expression, she felt uneasy. It was unusual, and a bad feeling crept into her chest. She tried to avoid him by saying she had lessons to attend, but he told her there were no lessons today because she was coming with him. At that moment, she knew it was over. Her father then told her instead of going to embroidery lessons every week, she would be meeting a new friend. "Isn't that great?" he asked with a smile. Heleis thought to herself, a friend? So she asked if he meant she would be getting a playmate. Playmates may seem like simple socializing and bonding on the surface, but among nobles, it is really about strengthening alliances between heirs in preparation for future political interests. Heleis never thought this would apply to a small family like hers. "Who am I supposed to meet? The Marquis of Zibin? The Duke of Dolven?" she asked. Her father then asked if she had forgotten the family they served. That could only mean one thing. She was meeting the Duke of Lionelic. Heleis thought to herself that she believed the heir of that family had been imprisoned. Her father turned away and told her to follow him at once, as the carriage was already prepared. Heleis was too shocked to speak. She could not believe they were leaving right now. She got into the carriage and complained that there was no way she could go dressed like this. She was only wearing these clothes because she had been going to her embroidery lessons. "The young master isn't someone who minds any of the things you're complaining about," her father said. She shouted back that she minded. Heleis thought to herself that first impressions were all about appearance. If he saw her like this, he would think she was some sloppy girl. Panic suddenly filled her mind. What if this was a turning point? She did not even know what kind of novel she had been reincarnated into. She had always believed she was not the main character, but if it was the Duke's heir, then maybe she could at least be sub-main character material, right? If she could get close to him, even if she never became the protagonist, maybe she could still be his friend. And even if that failed, she might at least catch the Duke's eye. Her father noticed the mischievous look on her face and asked what she was thinking about. They finally arrived at the Lionelic estate, Rembo Manor. Heleis entered the mansion with her father and was welcomed by the butler. While her father exchanged polite words with him, the young lady took her time to admire the large mansion round her. Her father introduced her to the butler, and she bowed as good manners demanded. Soon after, her father told the butler that he was leaving. Heleis could not believe her father was leaving her alone in a stranger's house for 4 full hours. He waved happily as he left, and she could not help thinking how irresponsible he looked. She quietly called herself an idiot for trusting him and coming along in the first place. The butler then asked if they should go see the young master, and of course, she agreed. They headed toward the garden where the young master was said to be. As they walked through the long hallway, Heleis thought the mansion felt far too calm. She wondered why her father was in such a hurry to leave. It was almost as if he was running away. Just then, she heard a loud scream and froze. She asked the butler what that sound was, and he calmly replied that the young master was with some friends. Heleis wondered if it had truly been a scream or just her imagination. She followed the butler, and when they reached the garden, he called out to the young master, announcing that Lady Lorca had arrived. Heleis glanced ahead and froze in shock. The young master was using magic to play with his friends, and it looked extremely dangerous. One boy ran in circles, crying for help, and the sound made Heleis's heart sink. The young master used his powers to control the boys, lifting them into the air while the servants simply stood by and watched. "Come on, run around some more. Is that all you've got?" the young master, Genon, said casually as he sat with his legs crossed. Heleis was too stunned to speak. She wondered what on earth he was doing. She had heard that he was imprisoned before, so she had planned to be kind to him. But after seeing this, it was clear. He was a psychopath. Genon glanced at her and suddenly released the boys. They fell to the ground with heavy thuds. He then asked if she was Heleis Lorca. "So, what do you say? Why don't you join us?" he added, wearing a creepy smile. Heleis stood there frozen as he said it looked fun. Genon told her that if she survived until the end, he would give her a treasure box. Since she was joining halfway through, he claimed she even had an advantage. Heleis could not believe he was treating people like toys. She thought to herself that this was an absurd way to give a friend a gift. "This is so rude and cheeky," she said. Genon glared at her. The other children were shocked by her words, as she called it an absurd way to give a friend a gift. "Everyone is scared, aren't they?" she asked. Genon asked if she was saying that his way of playing was wrong. "Who do you think you are?" he demanded. Heleis told him she could clearly tell the difference between a beast and a human, and that she at least expected him to follow basic manners. "If this is the only way you play, then I will take my leave," she called out to the servants to prepare a carriage. The servants were shocked. One of them said that would be a problem, but she shouted that there was no way she was joining such a game. They tried to calm her down, but she yelled again, saying there was no way she was staying in this house at all. Genon then told the servants to let her go, shocking everyone. When they tried to argue, he glared at them, and they had no choice but to obey. Heleis glanced back at him one last time before leaving. Genon laughed mischievously and said she was an interesting girl. On the way back, Heleis could not stop thinking about what kind of child he was. "He almost ended their lives at 14, she sighed. The young master had looked completely fine while doing something like that. Heleis looked down at her hands and saw how sweaty they were. Only then did she realize how scared she had been back there. She hoped he hadn't noticed. At that moment, she came to a clear decision. She did not want to be playmates. 1 week later, Heleis was in the middle of her embroidery lessons. Her teacher was explaining some basic etiquette when the door suddenly opened. It was her father calling out to her in a sweet way. Heleis panicked and quickly called out to him. He then apologized to her teacher and said that today's lesson had come to an end. "I received an invitation from the young master for you to be playmates again," he said. "This time it's just you." Heleis froze. Was he really telling her to go back there again? Her father smiled and told her to hurry and get ready. She immediately refused and told him she was not going. He was shocked at once, and Heleis felt anger rise inside her. "If you send me to that young master again, I'll tell Mom," she threatened, leaving everyone stunned. Her father tried to stop her from leaving and explained that he had already promised the young master she would come. Heleis told him that was his problem to deal with because that young master was not normal. He tried to persuade her, saying that he had not always been like that. Please think about your daughter, too, she shouted. He calmly replied that he believed in his daughter and told her to remember how wonderful the late Duke had been. The Lionelic Duke family had a boasting reputation, lacking nothing in power or wealth. They were a family of sword mages, producing generations of capable masters of the magical tower. Heleis had been saved by the late Duke when she was young, and she was deeply moved by the fact that her father had pledged loyalty to the Duke's family ever since. However, after the Duke died in an unfortunate accident, even though his son, Genon, was left as the sole heir, the Duke's brother, Marquis Belks, took away all of young Genon's rights. The Duke's family was in an unstable situation, but to repay the late Duke's kindness, her father still swore loyalty to the Lionelic family. You should be able to persuade the young master. After all, you are a child blessed by God, her father said. Heleis replied and told him calling her blessed by God was kind of an exaggeration, since she had been picked up at the monastery. As the heir of your family, you shouldn't speak like that, her father said confidently. He added that the young master did not have much time. Heleis was surprised. Genon had been born with the most powerful magical ability among the previous dukes, but his body was so weak that no one knew if he could survive until adulthood. That is why he was currently recovering. Yet, because he misused his magical power, his lifespan was shortened, and his personality grew increasingly twisted. I hardly have a chance to meet the young master. For the sake of the late Duke who saved you, I hope you can at least meet him once, her father said, playing the pity card. Heleis had no choice but to agree. On arriving at the Lionelic Mansion, Heleis stood at the gate thinking to herself that she did not want to meet the young master. Surely there must be a good excuse to avoid it. Suddenly, Genon sneaked up behind her. "What are you doing here?" Startled, she turned to him, frowning. "We meet again," he said. She asked why he was outside. He smiled and said he thought she might try to leave without coming in, so he had to come get her himself. They both went inside. Along the way, he told her he was looking forward to seeing the kind of game she would teach him. Heleis was surprised. "Are you talking about me?" she asked. "You said the way I play is wrong, didn't you? Then show me the right way to play," he said, smiling. "And if it's boring, he'll have to switch back to his own game." The thought of going back to his game frightened her, and she wondered what that could possibly mean. Heleis began with reading books. She took out a book, and he asked, "What is 1001 Nights?" "It's about a queen who told captivating stories for 1,000 nights to escape death at the hands of a tyrant." Just like that queen saved herself, Heleis thought she would find a way to escape from this young master. After sharing the first story, she moved on to the next book, The Little Prince. Genon interrupted her immediately. "I'll guess the ending," he said mischievously. "The prince marries the old queen and they live happily ever after, right?" Heleis yelled, "Not at all!" She was so annoyed that Genon kept saying her stories were all the same and that the characters were ridiculous. "Ah, that's it. We're done with this game," she yelled. They moved on to the next game. This time, they took pencils. Heleis explained that the game was for them to draw each other, but with a twist. They had to make the drawing as opposite as possible to the person's real features. Genon winked and smiled happily. "I've got this." They began. Heleis thought to herself that he should just watch her keep a straight face during this game, and she would definitely make him laugh. She winked confidently, pencil in hand. Genon looked at how Heleis was staring at him, confused. She thought to herself that she couldn't wait to see the look on his face after this. They had finished the game, and Genon got up, asking to see her drawing. She refused, saying she wanted to see his own first. He didn't hesitate and turned his drawing toward her. She grabbed it with a smirk, thinking she had to save the best for last. But when she actually saw Genon's drawing, her eyes widened in shock. "What do you think?" he asked confidently, standing before her. Genon had drawn her so beautifully that she couldn't stop looking at it. He asked if she liked it. She told him that he had made her look far more beautiful, even though the rules had said otherwise. "Yes, I know," he said. She frowned. "What do you mean?" Genon explained that the rules had been to draw the person's real features in the complete opposite way. That was exactly what he had done, making her look like the opposite of her real self. What? Did he just say that? That she's not beautiful? And this is so funny. Heleis grew instantly angry at his teasing. Genon asked to see her drawing, but she couldn't bear to show him hers when he had drawn hers so perfectly. "What's wrong? Don't you want to show it?" he asked. She angrily handed it to him. "Since you want to see it so badly," she snapped. Then she said she was going home and left immediately, leaving Genon wondering why her face was so red. He looked at her drawing of him, and it looked very funny, like something a child would have drawn. 1 week later, it was another meeting day. Just the thought of seeing him again after that embarrassing experience made shivers run down her spine. Just then, she heard her father calling. When she turned, he was smiling, holding the same painting of her from last time. It came from the young master. "Isn't it beautiful?" he asked. For Heleis, it was the opposite. She freaked out and demanded that he send it back. Her father asked what she was talking about, saying it was something that should be hung on the wall. "Are you trying to embarrass me?" she yelled. They both dragged the painting without noticing her mother's presence. "It's so gorgeous. Who painted it?" her mother asked. Both of them froze. Before her mother could even settle down, she reported everything to her, unable to believe all this had happened while she was away. Her father was kneeling in the corner, holding the drawing. Her mother asked if she had really agreed to see the young master every week. "I didn't realize it would be risky either," she said. "But don't worry, I'll see it through to the very end to avoid causing trouble for our family." Her mother suggested taking a break from all this for today. Her father freaked out. "Isaac stopped by. Why don't you go see him?" her mother asked, smiling. Isaac was back. Heleis was surprised to see him. She wondered if he was still the same Isaac she knew. He had grown so much taller. "How have you been? It's been forever," she said happily. Isaac apologized for leaving without even saying goodbye. They both sat down and began talking. While conversing, he asked if anything had changed while he was gone. Heleis panicked a little, wondering how to tell him about the incident with Genon. When she finally did, Isaac freaked out. "A playmate of the Lionelic family and not the daughter of Marquis Belks?" he exclaimed, standing up in surprise. She explained that she had managed to avoid going over there today thanks to his visit, but who knew what they might make her do next? Isaac asked if she wanted him to go with her next time, but it wasn't really a question. He was telling her that he would go. Heleis hesitated. She wouldn't want him to get into trouble because of her. "Don't worry," he said confidently. "He's been trained to be an heir, so he can handle the young master on my own." "Really? Then I'll tell them you'll come with me next week," she said, relieved. The next week came quickly. Genon folded his arms and glared. What is he doing here? With all due respect, Heleis said she informed him in advance that she'll be introducing a friend today. Genon faked a smile and said he doesn't remember giving her permission to bring anyone. Heleis forced a smile, cursing him silently in her mind. That means there's been some sort of mix-up in communication. Isaac stepped forward. "It's an honor to meet you." Genon just stared at him, arms folded, expressionless. Isaac asked if he could accompany Heleis in entertaining Genon today. Genon nodded. "He'll decide today's games." Isaac smiled and agreed to whatever he said. Heleis felt a strange tension in the air. What are they planning? She wondered. "Shall we get started?" she asked, smiling. Both boys smirked at each other, ready. Heleis felt awkward with their seriousness. They decided to go hunting. Heleis smiled at first, thinking it was perfect, until she realized they meant a real hunt. Her smile faded. She stared fearfully as both boys mounted their horses. Hunting isn't something kids do for fun, she thought. "Isaac, don't push yourself too hard, okay?" she called out. He told her not to worry. Genon watched both of them with a straight face, and you can sense his discomfort. Her lady stared at him, but he looked away sadly. The trumpet sounded, signaling the start of the hunt. Genon led on horseback, and Heleis watched nervously, thinking, nothing should go wrong. I don't see this ending well. Both boys rode their horses and hunted while Heleis sat, wondering who she should cheer for, because she couldn't just sit and do nothing. The young master had her father's support, and on the other hand, there was her friend who had come along with her. What would would you do in a situation like this? Before she could even conclude, it was announced that they had spotted prey, and the first one to catch it was young Master Genon. Young Master, you're amazing, Heleis cheered, and immediately it was announced that Isaac had caught prey too. Heleis cheered for him as well and felt proud that he had at least managed to get one right after Genon. One could see the blush on his face. Just then, an animal stormed from the grasses and ran into Isaac's horse, causing him to fall. Heleis called out worriedly, and some guards chased after the animal while others helped Isaac out. If you hadn't fallen into the bushes, you could have been seriously hurt, she said, worriedly, but he told her he was fine and that she need not worry. Genon stood behind watching them and suddenly left, calling everything boring. Isaac was helped up and noticed Genon leaving. I've lost this round to him, he said. Heleis wondered what was with that attitude. Someone got hurt and he didn't seem to care. She asked if there was a doctor so he could be treated immediately, and the servant promised to call one right away. Isaac told her it was just a minor injury and that it was kind of embarrassing. Heleis told him there was nothing to be embarrassed about because an injury is an injury. Isaac looked away, mumbling, "That's not what's embarrassing. Never mind, forget it," he said, frowning. Heleis wondered why the young master was pissed and thought about what trouble he might cause next time if they met. She sighed at the thought and began acting up. "My journal," she said, looking around. Isaac was confused, and she told him she had brought one and might have left it in the drawing room. "Let's go get it," Isaac said, but Heleis insisted he go get treated, she could go alone. Before leaving, she also added that it might take a while to find, so he should just head home after his treatment. Isaac was worried, but Heleis had already left. On the way, a maid asked what kind of journal it was, but she told her not to worry about that, and instead asked where the young master was. "I'm not sure exactly where he went, but when the young master isn't feeling well, he usually goes to the maze in the central garden," she said, pointing. Heleis headed there, entering and looking up, wondering if he was really there. The garden entrance looked so beautiful, and she was amazed by the view. She touched the flowers, thinking she had never known the estate had such a breathtaking place. Why didn't he show me this from the start? Immediately, she turned and noticed a magical, fish-like display in front of her. Just as she was watching in amazement, it moved towards her face, and she shut her eyes immediately. When she opened them, she noticed Genon sitting on the waterfall. "What is it? Is he okay?" she asked with a cold expression, calling out to him. She smirked, thinking to herself that he was sulking. She told him her friend was being treated and asked what he was doing here. He told her he was playing alone. "With magic fishes?" she asked. "Do they look like fishes to you?" He replied, adding that it was nothing special, just a mess of mana. "You can really do something like this?" she asked in amazement, and he replied, saying she couldn't believe a weak and ill-tempered young master like him could do something like this, right? She chuckled, saying that was not at all what she was thinking. Rather, she thought to herself, other kids would look up to her if he saw this. "Why would you use such an amazing power just to scare people?" she asked, and he replied that he wasn't scaring anyone, just playing. She told him that if he shared this beautiful part of his magic, he would really get along with his friends. Genon grew saddened, asking, "What about you?" She wondered what he meant, and he explained, "Aren't we looking at this together? Do you think you and I have gotten closer?" She hesitated, then smiled happily, saying, "Of course we have." She asked why they didn't start off like this. She told him the sun was already setting and that time really flies. "Yes, it felt quick to me too," he said, and she smiled, saying it was rare for them to feel the same way about something. That day, it felt like she had managed to open the door to Genon's heart. At least a little. Until the next meeting day came. Heleis was shocked when she received the message that the young master was refusing her visit. Why? Could something be wrong? Or did he feel she was getting too close to him? Meanwhile, someone had picked up a note, written in ancient language. It was an order to assassinate Count Gott. A few hours earlier, Heleis's mother had asked if she was going to visit the young master today. She had said yes. Her mother smiled, thinking they seemed to have grown close, but smiled even more to herself, knowing it wasn't as much as her mom thought. Now that was how she left the house, but upon arriving at Rembo Manor, she was told that the young master was refusing her visit. Her carriage raider suggested they head back, but Heleis refused. She insisted that she must see the young master at all costs. "If the carriage stays here, it'll raise suspicion," she said. She ordered him to go back without her. The raider grew scared. "Whatever you're thinking is dangerous," he warned. "You expect me to just turn around and go home after being turned away like this?" she yelled. Her anger made the raider tremble. Ignoring him, Heleis walked away and began climbing the fence, cursing at the servant who had doubted she could scale a wall. As she tried, she realized that at 14, her arms were quite short. She, obviously not pleased, said he shouldn't underestimate her. After all, she had been training with knights since she was young, she muttered. Heleis jumped from an angle and with a burst of effort climbed to the top. "Piece of cake," she called out, proud of her achievement. She quickly glanced into the manor and saw servants shouting her name. "Wherever she is, she shouldn't be here. She should go home," the servants whispered amongst themselves. "Isn't the Viscount's daughter allowed in the estate? She's supposed to be the young master's playmate," one said. The other replied that he was just told to send her back today. They searched the manor, confident it wouldn't be long before they found her. Heleis tried to find another route, crawling silently, but she bumped into someone. Her head hurts as she looks up. It was a maid. Panic ran through her, and she shut her eyes, thinking how unlucky she was to run into a maid in a place like this. The maid smiled, telling her not to worry and to follow her. Her lady couldn't believe the maid was actually here to help. Thanks to the maid, Heleis was able to get into the mansion without any trouble. As she reached the door, she thought to herself, the young master must be here. She opened it and stepped inside, calling out to him, but immediately froze at the humid smell of the room, heavy with water plants. "Young master, it's me, Heleis Lorca," she said, her eyes widening at the sight of Genon lying on the bed looking pale. Panic gripped her as she wondered what was wrong. He grunted in response, and she rushed to ask if he was okay. The maid entered just then, saying the young master was awake. Heleis explained he had been unconscious but struggling. She touched his forehead and felt the heat. He was burning. Turning to the maid, she asked if he was unwell. The maid explained it started this morning. Heleis asked why she wasn't told earlier. "The young master was looking forward to your visit, but he fell ill at the last minute." Heleis thought to herself, "He's such a proud person. He probably didn't want me to see him this week." Then she wondered why he wasn't using magical treatment. He should be using healing magic. Genon opened his eyes and saw her. He told her to leave, but she asked if he recognized her. "It's me, Heleis," she said softly. He held her hand, saying he knew. He looked at her sadly, insisting she should leave, yet she maintained eye contact. He was still holding her hand as he repeated it. Suddenly, he fell asleep again. You could see he was truly in bad shape. Feeling sad, she turned to the maid. "I want to stay with him for a while," she said. The maid hesitated. It was time for her to go back home, but seeing how tightly the young master held her hands, allowed her to stay and brought a chair for her to sit next to him. Heleis sat quietly, and sunlight streamed through the window. Slowly, she grew drowsy and eventually fell asleep, her head resting on him. In her dream, a strange man appeared holding something purple, like a heart. Just as she asked what it was, the man glared at her. "I'll make sure both you and the young master disappear." Heleis woke up immediately, finding herself back in her room. She wondered how she got there. She had just been at the Lionelike estate. The door opened, and her father walked in. "You're awake," he said. "I came because I heard you've been asleep for an entire day. Did something happen?" "An entire day? That's strange," she thought. "You were taking care of the young master, right?" he asked, sitting beside her. Heleis tried to make sense of it. She didn't remember returning home, yet she somehow had slept through an entire day. Her father sighed. "It's obvious that now you know the young master's condition isn't good." "Yes, but the way the Lionelike family handles things is strange," she complained. "They didn't use healing magic, only conventional treatment." "There's a reason for that," her father said solemnly. Heleis's heart sank. What reason could that be? "The young master, he's been given a terminal prognosis," he said sadly. Heleis asked her father if the young master was aware of his condition and how that had anything to do with his treatment. "Are you saying he should just give up because healing magic won't work?" she asked. Her father explained, "It would be best. His body can't handle the mana anymore. If he receives more, it could make things worse." Hearing this, Heleis remembered enjoying Genon's magic last time, and a thought struck her. She shouted, "The young master used his mana for me! On Monday, the day before he collapsed." She panicked. Her father asked if it was really true. She said it could be because of her suffering. "He always pretended he was fine the day after he used mana," her father said gently. "So you could say it's your fault he used it anyway. He's probably lonely deep down." Her father suggested that she become friends with the young master soon, and she agreed. "He's been risking his life every time he hangs out. What a fool," she thought. Her father smiled. "I'll get medicine for you from the steward since you've been asleep too long." "There's no need. I've rested enough." Then she remembered having a dream before waking up, but she couldn't recall what it was about. She decided to let it go. It must not have been important if she forgot. It was Friday. In Rembo Manor, Genon lay on his bed thinking to himself, "Heleis is probably mad at me and won't show up today." Just then, there was a knock at the door. He He turned, and the butler announced from outside, "Lady Lorca has arrived." Genon jumped up in shock and excitement. The butler added that they had thought she wouldn't come. "But why wouldn't I be here?" Heleis asked herself. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by a noise from Genon's room, and they stood stunned. Heleis asked if he was still unwell. The butler confirmed that he was. Immediately, the door handle twisted, and Genon opened the door. "You actually came?" he asked. Heleis noticed his hair and ears and smiled warmly at him. She touched his ears happily. "Did you just wake up?" she asked, leaving the poor boy stunned. He hadn't expected that. He pushed her hands away, and she chuckled. "Why are you surprised to see me?" "I'm not surprised," he yelled. The butler cleared his throat. "I'll be leaving now," he said, clearly unaware that Genon was still standing there. Heleis asked the butler to help her bring what she had asked him to prepare, and he agreed. Genon remained surprised by her sudden closeness. She served him a bowl of soup. "What is this?" he asked. "It's apple soup I used to drink whenever I was sick as a child," she said excitedly. "I had your chef make it for you." Genon glared at the chef. "Why did you agree to this?" "He's not feeling well," Heleis explained. "If he takes this, he'll feel better in no time." He thanked her and took a spoonful, but his expression immediately changed when the soup touched his tongue. "Not to your taste?" she panicked. Genon told her it tasted like toothpaste, and she explained it was because of the mint in it. "It feels like I'm brushing my teeth," he complained. She thought to herself, that didn't stop him from eating it, though. Heleis told him that if he didn't like it, he should just stop taking it. He yelled, "Who said I didn't like it?" Her lady asked why he sent her away on Wednesday, and he reminded her that she had barged in. "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were suffering because of the magic. I'm really sorry," she apologized, her voice heavy with sadness. Genon sighed. "It's not like avoiding magic would make me live longer." She reminded him that it increased his pain. He went silent for a moment, then suddenly asked, "You heard about it, didn't you? I don't have much time left. Rather than holding back my powers just to live a few extra months, I'd rather use them as much as I want and live freely." His voice was sad. Heleis felt a pang of sadness herself. She sighed and told him not to visit her, at least for a few days after he used magic. "No, I won't," she shouted, leaving him confused. She leaned closer and asked, "For how long have you been suffering like this?" "I don't remember," he said. She asked where exactly he felt the pain. Genon smirked. "Are you going to cure it?" She replied confidently, "I might." He called her a big mouth. Heleis nagged, saying he kept too many secrets and should at least tell her when he was hurting. "Call me Geno," he said suddenly. She was confused. "Am I your nanny or something? Why do you keep addressing me so formally? Talk to me like I talk to you." Heleis was speechless for a moment. Then a wave of sadness hit her. She whispered that she regretted falling asleep that day and leaving him alone. Genon's eyes widened in shock. He looked away, cheeks red, and muttered, calling her a fool. She wondered why he was cursing, then leaned very close to him, her voice serious. Genon went numb. Seeing her so close, he felt his heart beating fast and couldn't understand why. Heleis asked Genon where it hurt the most when using magic. Just then, she was surprised to see his face all red. She asked if he was having a fever again, but he looked away, complaining that the room was stuffy. Thinking to himself, why is she curious about that? He knew if he didn't tell her where it hurt, she wouldn't go home today. Genon told Heleis the place that hurt was his heart. "Your heart?" she asked in surprise. He touched the area and explained, "Whenever I use mana, I feel a pain like something is crushing my heart." Her lady asked if it was some kind of heart disease. He replied that he didn't know. The doctor said nothing was abnormal. Heleis asked if it only happened when he used mana, and he decided to give her a full explanation. "We are a family of mages, and for generations we have produced capable masters of magical towers. The magical power possessed by the head of the family represents the power of the Leonelic family, and the head of the family now is me. So every time I use magic, I end up like this," he said with a smirk. Heleis was already worried. She asked if it was some kind of curse. He told her he stayed in this mansion to avoid such things because it was the safest place, filled with all kinds of traps. Heleis thought to herself, this mansion has protection against magic and curses? It's like a delicately crafted birdcage. Genon smirked and asked if she really believed all that about being cursed. "Don't jump to conclusions on your own," he said, explaining that his only problem was that his body wasn't compatible with his Mana. Heleis told him that if that was the case, the previous duke should have left some countermeasures. Genon told her the previous duke had died before leaving anything behind, and he himself didn't even know how to use mana until his parents passed away. Heleis said she didn't want to see him suffering anymore. Genon told her he would contact her on a day he wasn't feeling well, so she wouldn't come. "No!" she shouted angrily. Leaving the poor boy confused, Genon yawned and said he wasn't planning on drawing fairy tales or pictures anymore. Heleis told him there were plenty of other things they could do. She said there were many fun ways to enjoy themselves without using magic, and he should also stop being mean to the kids who visited him. Genon smiled. "You're the only one who knows how to do that. Does that mean you'll come to see me every day?" he asked. She was surprised, then suddenly smiled. "It's not entirely impossible," she said. She asked if he would join her in her embroidery lessons, and he couldn't believe she had just said that. Heleis chuckled. "Don't worry, there are plenty of ways we can play." Genon laughed. Her lady couldn't help but think to herself that she used to find him an unpleasant young lord, but today he looked like a normal person. Even though his body was weak, keeping him locked in this mansion seemed suspicious. Maybe something else was being hidden. Heleis came back home, and of course her father was there to welcome her. Before he could say anything, she dragged him angrily. "What's wrong?" he asked. "I have something to talk about," she said, locking the door as soon as he stepped in. She blocked him, saying she had a question to ask. He asked if the young lord had told her anything, but she shook her head. Genon hadn't told her anything. Her father was surprised she had become friends with him to the point of being informal. He warned her to use honorifics with the young lord, but she told him that he had approved of her calling him like this. He squeezed in his scoldings, asking her to only use it when they were together as playmates. Heleis told him that wasn't important now. What she wanted to know was why Genon was locked up in the mansion. "Does the young lord think that way?" he asked. Heleis replied, "What do you think instead?" "I don't know. The young lord spends his time in the mansion due to the wishes of Marcus Belks, but from what I see, it seems like a parent's desire to not lose the young lord as well," he explained. Heleis asked if he meant that Genon had been suffering like this from the very beginning. Her father told her that he endured the pain while working to increase the amount of mana he could use. Heleis was saddened, thinking to herself that this was all he could do within the mansion. Count Lorca held her shoulders comfortingly. "He's doing research to find a way to help the young lord get better, so you don't need to worry too much," he said. "By the way, this Saturday is that day," her father reminded her. She wondered what he was talking about, until she remembered. The Saturday he mentioned was a gathering for children. This was a party that had started to trend among the nobility. It was an occasion to gather noble children and assess their future potential. Heleis smiled as she walked around, eating cake. She knew she was just here to listen to everyone brag about themselves. But to her surprise, she noticed that eyes were on her. Just as she wondered what it was about and who they were, she heard them calling her the kid who often visits the Lionelic young lord. A party she thought she'd attend just to enjoy sweets had turned into a place to hear annoying things, and it was all Genon's fault. Heleis stomped off, looking for a place to hide where no one would disturb her until the party was over. Just as she tried to hide behind a pillar, she bumped into someone. It was a girl. She quickly apologized for startling her, but when she looked closer, she saw the girl had purple eyes. The girl apologized softly, too. Heleis froze, realizing she had just met the main character of the game. After meeting Princess Sienna, Heleis realized she was in a nurturing game where you raise a girl who came from the fairy kingdom. The main character was Sienna Salas, captivated by the entire kingdom and becoming a huge phenomenon. In her previous life, Heleis had also been captivated by her. That's why she recognized her at first glance. It dawned on Heleis that this place wasn't a romance novel, but actually inside a game. Heleis couldn't hide her expression. Sienna panicked, wondering if she had said something rude. Heleis thought Sienna was cuter in person. Now that she thought about it, she remembered something strange. According to the game, to reach the ending, there were certain conditions. "Sienna Salas, right? I'm Heleis Lorca," Heleis said, confusing the little girl. She added, asking if Sienna wanted to become a princess. Seeing her bombard questions on their first meeting, Sienna was confused. princess?" she asked. According to the novel, the protagonist regresses after reaching the bad ending. Heleis told Sienna to not mind her words, they meant nothing, and turned away wondering if she had rushed things. In the game, the bad ending was the worst. Sienna would meet her death without telling anyone anything, including about herself. Players who reached this ending could start a second playthrough with level 150 stats, which the game called the regression. To reach the princess ending, all stats for evil had to be over 1,000, so the regression was essential. Watching Sienna like this, it was obvious she hadn't fallen into darkness or started a second playthrough yet. Heleis had no ambition to follow the typical path to clear the game, but if Sienna reached the bad ending and the entire world reset, what would happen to her? Sienna, watching the young lady behave strangely, was totally confused and didn't know what to do. Heleis thought to herself that for the bad ending to happen, Sienna had to incur the Duke's wrath and possess the magical crystal that was his source of energy. At that moment, Heleis remembered the dream she had the other day, one she had forgotten. She felt dizzy and almost fell. Sienna held her, asking if she was all right. Heleis tried hard to remember the name of the magical crystal, which she was supposed to know. Her eyes widened in shock when she realized the magical crystal was Genon's heart, and that was what his uncle had in that dream. Heleis fell to the ground instantly and fainted. Sienna panicked, calling out for help immediately as she held her lady. Heleis was too weak. She thought to herself, "Genon's heart," before passing out. Heleis woke up to the sound of her name being called. Sienna was relieved to see her awake and immediately began crying. "You suddenly fainted! You gave me such a shock!" she exclaimed. Heleis got up and looked at Sienna strangely, wondering what her current stats were, since she couldn't see the status window. Sienna wondered what was wrong with her. Who behaves like this on the first meeting? Heleis wished she knew the ending they were heading toward. "Did you hit your head when you fainted?" Sienna asked through her tears. Heleis didn't respond. Instead, she was quietly glad that the young girl hadn't fallen into darkness yet. Judging by her lack of friends, her social stat must be low, and from all the crying, her stress stat was probably very high. Heleis sighed. She had just realized that Sienna's chances of becoming a princess were low, but she confidently concluded that she needed to avoid the bad ending at all costs because that was the only way she could survive. It was another visitation day for Heleis. In the carriage, her father reminded her to take good care of the young master. On the way, she wondered if Genon would die from this illness. The magical crystal was designed to react to blood relatives. In other words, Marquis Belks would gain the title of Duke Lionelic if Genon died. With her arms folded, Heleis knew that everything would eventually begin when Genon died, but she couldn't bring herself to think about that. She concluded that she needed to save the boy because that was the only way she could survive too. When she arrived at the estate, Heleis was shocked to see a black carriage already there. From the crest on the carriage, she could tell who it belonged to. She rushed inside, wondering why he was visiting Genon at this hour. When she reached the young master's door, she met the maid, who was about to inform her that the young master had a visitor. Heleis interrupted, saying she already knew because she had seen the carriage. Heleis knocked at the door. "Your Grace, it's me. I'm coming in." Before she could even get a reply, she opened the door and Genon was shocked to see her there. "Now's not the time. Stay outside," he said. Marquis Belks turned, asking what was going on. He had a cold and scary expression on his face. Seeing Heleis, he asked who the girl was, with a polite smile, introducing herself to Marquis Belks. Inside her mind, she thought, so this is the man trying to steal Genon's title. "Lorca, you really do look a lot like your father," the Marquis said, then asked what had brought her here. Genon suddenly yelled, asking if she did not hear him when he told her to leave. Heleis glared at him. In her heart, she felt wronged. She had come all the way here because she was worried about him. Turning to the Marquis, Heleis calmly said that she was Genon's playmate for today, leaving Genon completely speechless. "The young Duke?" the Marquis asked in surprise. Heleis smiled and answered yes, young Duke Genon, thinking to herself that there was no way she would let anyone take the dukedom from him. The Marquis Belks then turned to Genon and asked if he was really using his mana and risking his life. Heleis spoke up at once, saying she had been hearing that the young Duke had been doing many strange and dangerous things lately, and that she was truly worried about his health. The Marquis smiled faintly and said she was right. "Sometimes I forget that Genon has been given only a limited time to live," he said, then told Genon to stop doing reckless things. Maybe then he might live a little longer. Genon sat there in silence. Heleis, on the other hand, felt anger rise in her chest. How could he say such words to someone who was already sick? She clenched her fist and told the Marquis not to worry. She would do whatever it took to find a solution. "You will?" the Marquis asked, a dark grin spreading across his face. Heleis replied firmly that if the young duke were to pass away, then she would follow him. Wait, did she just say she would die with him? What did you just say? Genon asked in shock. At the same time, Marquis Belks noticed Heleis' tightly clenched fist. If Genon dies, the heart of Genon will be created, and this will bring about the apocalypse afterward. So please, Your Grace, trust me, I'm the only one on your side, she said fiercely, leaving Genon deeply touched by her words. Marquis Belks suddenly burst into loud laughter and asked Genon where he had found someone like her. Heleis answered fearlessly that he did not find her, she came to him on her own. I'll head home for today, Marquis Belks said as he stood up ready to leave. He told Heleis that if he ever got the chance, they would meet again. The Marquis turned away and left, thinking to himself that he believed Genon was planning something in secret, but now it seemed Genon was simply playing house. That meant he had come here for nothing. Still, as he walked away, he thought that the girl might be useful someday. Genon and Heleis watched him leave, and the door slammed shut. Heleis let out a long sigh, then turned to Genon with anger. Just because he showed up doesn't mean you should let him in so easily, she said. Genon sighed and replied, the Marquis already knew everything and had come with an inside source, so he couldn't simply turn him away. Heleis reminded him that he had turned her away at the gate before, so doing the same to the Marquis wouldn't have been his first time. More importantly, Genon said, what was that you said earlier? She asked what he meant. He reminded her of what she had said, that she would follow him if he died. Heleis froze, clearly shocked. She did not know what to say at first, then let out a small laugh and said she only meant that she would do anything she could so that he could survive. That was all. Genon looked at her in surprise. Really? Is that all? He said as he grabbed her hand, and the two of them stared into each other's eyes. Heleis quickly looked away and said, of course I would never lie to him, even though she was clearly lying. She gently pulled her hand away and told him that she had brought apple soup again today to help him get better. Saying that, she turned and left, saying she would go get it. As she walked away, she thought to herself that she truly needed. The weekend arrived, and Heleis began her mission to save Genon. In the game, Princess Sienna, merchants appeared from time to time, selling strange items and useful information. Heleis told herself that she was lucky and should be able to find one in the plaza. She looked around carefully, wondering where the merchant could be hiding. Her eyes suddenly widened when she spotted someone in the crowd. Excited, she called out and rushed forward, thinking to herself that this must be her lucky day to find one so quickly. She ran up to a person covered from head to toe and said she wanted to buy something. What is it? The person asked. Heleis asked if she had CH11. The person froze in surprise and asked what she had just said. How do you know about that? The elderly woman with green hair asked. Heleis smiled brightly, thinking to herself that this meant the woman really had it. The official name of CH11 was Fairy's Tear. It was an item owned only by Queen Isabel and the Dragon of Lark Valley, a true cheat item in the game. Heleis smiled, thinking to herself that if she could get it, she would be able to save Genon. The woman only glanced at her and said nothing. Meanwhile, Heleis was full of excitement as she brought out her bag of money, thinking to herself that she could finally enjoy the benefits of being a noble lady. I'll pay whatever you ask, she said. But the woman apologized and said she could not sell it to her. Heleis' eyes widened in shock. Why not? She shouted. Because you are the key to causing trouble, the woman replied. What does that even mean? Heleis thought. It was strange and unsettling. When Heleis returned home, she was so sad that even her maid noticed. The maid asked if something had happened at the square the day before. Heleis replied that it was nothing special, though inside she felt heavy. She had thought finding the merchant would make everything easier, but instead the woman had said such disturbing things to her. Heleis then pointed at a bracelet and said she wanted to wear that one. Her servant looked surprised since Heleis always said bracelets and earrings were too noisy. Heleis smiled and said she was into them these days. In truth, she knew that particular bracelet had a protection spell on it. It would keep her safe. She did not fully understand the merchant's warning, so she decided it was better to be careful. After helping her put it on, the servant smiled and reminded her about the festival coming up soon and asked if Heleis was ready to become the flower maiden. I'm not going, Heleis said calmly as she fixed her hair in the mirror, leaving her maid completely surprised. The Flower Maiden Festival was a contest held to choose the most beautiful woman of the year. In other words, a competition of charm stats. Heleis told her maid that the young master was waiting, so she was leaving. She said there was no reason for her to take part since she did not even have a chance of winning. Inside her heart, she thought that since she could not buy CH11, she needed to find another way as quickly as possible. When she arrived at the young master's estate, the maid informed her that the young master was not in his room today. "Then where is he?" Heleis asked, clearly worried. The maid replied sadly that he might be in the rose maze. Heleis nodded, saying that was where he always went when he felt down. Does that mean something happened? She wondered. The maid then told her that Marquis Belcris had come by before she arrived. Hearing this, Heleis thanked the maid for letting her know and thought to herself, so that's why he's feeling this way. Her expression darkened at the thought of Marquis Belks having so much free time, enough to come and bully his own nephew. Without hesitation, Heleis headed to the rose maze, knowing the young master was likely sulking there. As expected, Genon was sitting near the waterfall. Heleis called out to him happily from afar, but the moment she saw his face, she knew it did not take long for his hated uncle to drain all his strength. "Why are you here alone?" she asked gently. She also asked if he had used magic, but he did not reply. She asked about his health, yet he remained silent. Heleis was shocked by his lack of response and realized he was truly deep in despair. Still, she did not give up. She sat down beside him and began talking about the founding festival next week, asking if he had any plans. Genon finally spoke. He said he would be staying home. Heleis was so happy just to hear his voice that she quickly asked if he was really planning to stay home the whole time. Genon told her he had no reason to go. Her expression fell. It was hard to imagine the heir of the Duke's family not attending such an important national event. She wondered if he did not want to go or if he simply couldn't go. In the end, she felt that being trapped like this was no different than being a puppet. Heleis knew she had to do something to lift his mood. "I don't have any plans either," she said softly, "so why don't we go together?" Genon glanced at her, surprised and confused. "What about the Flower Maiden contest?" he asked. She replied that there were many girls prettier than her, so there was no point in joining. She said she would rather walk with him, enjoy the flowers, and experience the festival together. Heleis asked if he had ever attended a festival before. Without waiting for his answer, she excitedly asked him to go with her. "I really want to see the avenue of trees and the Flower Maiden procession. Let's go together," she shouted. Genon then explained that the festival would be on Saturday and there would be spies from his uncle in the mansion. If he left on a different day than usual, they would surely report it. Heleis suggested that they sneak out. She said she had a close maid she trusted, someone who could help make it work. "You really are a social genius," Genon said with a smirk. Heleis jumped to her feet and asked if that meant he was saying yes. She bounced with excitement at the thought of him actually coming along. Genon watched her, confused. Was she really this excited about just sneaking out? Inside his heart, he thought she was truly unpredictable, yet for some reason, whenever he was with her, he felt light, calm, and happy. Heleis then decided it was time to properly plan everything with him. On the day of the festival, a few trusted servants helped them sneak out and pleaded with Heleis to take good care of the young master. Seeing how well-dressed Genon was, Heleis smiled and said that he seemed to be looking forward to this day. The carriage began to move, and Genon quietly looked out the window. Heleis asked if he was feeling a bit off, and he confirmed it. Inside her heart, she thought that he actually seemed to be in good spirits. She smiled, knowing it was because it had been a long time since he last stepped outside the mansion. When they arrived, the carriage stopped and the two of them stepped down. Heleis could not hide her excitement. She was completely over the moon. There were so many people around. She pointed excitedly toward the avenue of trees and grabbed Genon's hand, dragging him along and telling him that they should go there. She kept pulling him, saying it was beautiful and that they would soon see the Flower Maiden procession there. Genon wasn't even listening. His mind was focused on the fact that she was holding his hand. He couldn't help but think about how small and warm her hand felt in his. Just then, they heard a sudden sound. Heleis stopped and asked what it was. When she turned around, she saw Sienna, barefoot. Heleis and Jen were shocked. Sienna's eyes were filled with tears, and the moment she saw Heleis looking at her, she began to cry and ran toward her, begging for help. My question is, what the hell is Sienna doing here of all places? Why is she interrupting this little couple's moment? It's so annoying. Looking at Sienna from head to toe, Heleis could not help asking if she had done something and gotten herself chased. Sienna cried harder and said no. She grabbed Heleis's hand tightly and said she would explain as they walked. Sienna clung to Heleis's arm, and Genon stood there speechless. He glared at her, then quickly looked away. Heleis glanced at Genon and could not help thinking that he seemed down, unless it was just her imagination. Turning her attention back to Sienna, Heleis tried to cheer her up. Sienna explained that she did not want to attend the flower festival, but her father and Soma insisted that she must go, saying it was important for her to attend events like this. Without realizing it, Sienna mentioned her kingdom, not knowing that Heleis already knew everything about it. Who's Soma? Heleis asked. Sienna replied that Soma was her butler. She explained that she came from a fallen family and that all the servants had left except Soma. Whenever she attended parties or events, people often looked down on her because of her background. Though, of course, there are people like you, Miss Lurka, she said with a small smile. Heleis then asked if she had escaped halfway through the flower festival. Sienna nodded and said it was easier for her to work at the market or do part-time jobs instead. Heleis was shocked. "You're already working? You look younger than me," she said. Sienna replied that she had to earn money with her father. She mostly did mining and farming work, but she had also worked as a maid and even as a tutor. Heleis thought to herself that Sienna was the hard-working type of player, someone who focused on building stamina and stats while young, then joined a prestigious art school, then settled down by getting married. She chuckled quietly. It was definitely a very Japanese-style approach. Sienna seemed so focused on work that her social skills were probably very low. Heleis thought this was perfect. Someone like this would be easy to get information from. "So, Heleis, what will you do from here?" Genon asked. She turned to him confused and asked what he meant. Genon asked if she had really come here just to hang out with him. At the same time, Sienna was beside them, begging not to be left behind and asking to take part in the flower festival together. Heleis thought to herself that she had come out today to spend time with Genon, so it was only right to part ways with Sienna. Just as Heleis was about to say they should split up, Sienna suddenly interrupted. "Let's do something better than flower viewing. I'll tell you something even better," Sienna said. Genon and Heleis both asked what could possibly be better. Sienna leaned closer and said there was a rare person who only appears at events like this. "The genius astrologer from the underworld. I know where Medeisis is," Sienna said, with a serious expression. Genon's eyes turned cold. "Did you just mention the underworld?" He immediately told Heleis they should not get involved and leave. But Heleis stopped him. She stepped closer to Sienna, eyes shining with excitement, and asked if she had really mentioned the astrologer Medeisis and if she was serious about what she was saying. "Yes!" Sienna shouted excitedly. Medeisis was an NPC who could tell the ending a game was heading towards based on the current status, so if they met her, she might know the ending closest to Sienna's current path. Heleis told Sienna that she was in, leaving Genon completely shocked. Did she just choose this over him? Heleis explained that she had always wanted to see an astrologer, at least once. Genon then warned her that the underworld was a government-designated danger zone, so it was better not to go anywhere near it. "If something happens, you'll protect me, right?" Heleis asked softly. Her words melted the young master's heart, and he did not know how to respond. "You wouldn't?" she asked again. Genon stayed silent. Sienna glanced between them, confused about what was going on. She leaned closer to Heleis and whispered, asking if the boy even had the strength to protect her, since it did not look like he did. "That's quite bold of you," Genon said coldly, "to step between us and say whatever you want." Sienna made a pitiful face and replied that she only wanted to walk around with Lady Lorca, so it had nothing to do with him. Heleis stepped closer and took a good look at Genon. Inside her mind, she thought, thick eyebrows and sharp eyes. Compared to others our age, he has such clear features, a truly handsome face. She realized Sienna probably did not know about Genon's chronic illness when she said that. Still, being seen as weak in the underworld was not a good thing at all. Genon asked, "Why are you staring at me so much?" Heleis quickly looked away and concluded that she really needed to get him to eat more nutritious food. Anyway, Heleis said, the three of us are going together. And one more thing, let's all try to get along while we're together, okay? Judging by their expressions, it was clear the other two were not planning to do that anytime soon. The three of them entered a narrow alley. Heleis held on to Genon the entire time, saying she could not believe an astrologer would be hiding in a place like this. Sienna told them they were almost there, then suddenly pointed at a tent and said that was it. Medicis is really here? Heleis asked, urging them to hurry before it got dark. Suddenly, a voice stopped them, asking, "Who are they?" Genon immediately stepped forward, standing in front while the girls stayed behind him. "I can tell you came from a wealthy family," a brown-haired man said coldly, holding his suit jacket. "This isn't a place for kids like you to fool around. If you understand that, then go home." Sienna suddenly shouted that they were thugs, and the man snapped back, asking who she was calling thugs. "We don't mean any trouble," Heleis said quickly. "We just need to get inside that tent." The man glared at them and asked what business children like them had there. He told them again to go home, saying this place was not meant for them. Before they could say anything else, they were chased away. Heleis stood there in disbelief. Why were they kicked out so easily? Was there some kind of requirement to meet Medicis? Then it hit her. If someone did not have enough evil status in the underworld, they would be kicked out immediately. And looking at the people she came with, Sienna had been mining rocks, and Genon had spent his days sick inside the manor. There was no way either of them had high evil points. "Let's go," Heleis said tiredly. Genon asked if she was really leaving without getting her reading. Heleis chuckled and said the place was kind of scary, so she'd rather leave it for now. Genon didn't argue. He never liked the idea of coming here in the first place. On their way back, Heleis asked Sienna when the fortune teller usually appeared. Sienna was not sure. She sometimes shows up during the Harvest Festival, New Year's, or birthday celebrations, but there are years when she does not appear at all. Sienna apologized, saying she was sorry for suggesting this when it turned out like this. Heleis told her not to worry. It was fine. Thanks to her, they had experienced something quite unique. Genon was unusually quiet, and Heleis began to wonder why. Sienna still looked pitiful, but Heleis reassured her again that everything was fine. Just then, a man appeared, breathing heavily as if he had been running for a long time. He called out loudly, and Sienna turned around in shock. Heleis immediately recognized him. She had seen his face in the game. Soma, Sienna Salas's butler, a perfectionist who was quick to lecture but who cared deeply for Sienna. According to the story, he had even followed her all the way from the fairy kingdom. Sienna cried, saying she was not running away. Soma smirked and said he would hear that explanation once they returned to the manor. Soma then noticed Lady Lorca. He turned back, bowed deeply, and apologized for any trouble Sienna might have caused. Heleis smiled and told him it was fine. Sienna called out to Lady Lorca as she was being taken away, but Heleis knew deep down that Soma was doing all this because he cared. "Phew, that was hectic," Heleis exhaled. Genon, however, remained silent. She turned to His Grace and asked what they should do next. "Do what you want," he replied sadly. Heleis thought to herself that he seemed down again. He had been stone-faced the whole time. She winked at him and suggested they check out the marketplace. Genon only glared without saying a word. Suddenly, he grabbed Heleis's hand and told her to run with him. Run? Where are we running to? Heleis wondered. Everything was happening so suddenly. As they ran, her spell bracelet slipped off her wrist, but Genon did not stop for her to pick it up. At the corner of the street, a man with his face covered watched as the young master and Lady Lorca ran past. They finally stopped, and Heleis bent over, breathing heavily. She asked if they could stop already because she was tired. "I didn't know you could run like that," she complained, "and I lost my bracelet too." Then she asked why he suddenly made them run for no reason. Genon told her they were being followed. Heleis froze in shock. Followed? Genon explained it was one of his uncle's spies. Heleis could not help thinking that Genon already knew, even though Marquis Belks claimed only trusted people knew such things. She suggested that they should hurry back immediately. Once they were inside the carriage, Heleis asked softly if his uncle would be angry. Genon replied that even if his uncle retaliated, there was nothing to gain from it. "Anyway, here." Genon said as he took out a beautiful pink bracelet. Heleis looked at it and asked what it was. Genon told her it was her bracelet. She asked when he got it, then realized he had picked it up back at the marketplace. He explained he was in such a hurry that he could not fix it properly, but it was better than nothing. Heleis thanked him as she put it back on her wrist. She winked, showing it off, and asked how it looked. Genon smiled and said it suited her well. Heleis smiled as she looked at it, thinking it looked like a magical artifact. She wondered if he had added any kind of spell to it. Suddenly, her expression darkened. She had been so excited for this outing, yet it did not turn out the way she hoped. She wondered if she would ever get another chance like this, and silently hoped that nothing bad would happen. Back at Marquis Belks's manor, he stood on the terrace as the spy he sent returned. He asked what the spy had seen. The spy reported that there was no suspicious behavior, just as expected. The young master had gone out with Viscountess Lorca, then a third woman had joined them, and the three of them went to the underworld. The underworld? Marquis Belks repeated with a smirk. So he's old enough to go to places like that now. The spy bowed and apologized, saying his cover had been blown in the end, and that the young master had noticed him. The Marquis waved it off and asked if there was anything else. The spy added that the young master seemed quite close to the Viscountess. That insolent little girl, the Marquis said coldly. She's been a nuisance from the start, and now she has truly crossed the line. He then told the spy to inform the others that they had found the scapegoat for atonement. A scapegoat for atonement? What does that even mean? The following week, when Heleis arrived at the young master's estate, her rider was informed that the mansion was under house arrest. No one was allowed to enter or leave. When her lady was told, she was shocked. Soon after, the head butler came out and called for her. Heleis asked what in the world was going on and why Genon was under house arrest. The butler told her to be at ease. His Grace, Lord Leonelic, was safe. Heleis felt a wave of relief. The butler then told her not to blame herself. This had been the young master's first time attending the founding festival, and it was all thanks to her. They were grateful. How long will he be on house arrest? Heleis asked. The butler replied that it was up to Marquis Belks to decide, so they could not say for now. Heleis's mood darkened. She said she understood and would head back home for the day. Seeing how heavily guarded the mansion was, she knew it would be impossible to sneak in this time. She might even get hurt, so leaving was the best choice. The butler bowed and apologized for the trouble. Heleis asked him to pass along her regards to Genon. On her way home, Heleis wondered if Marquis Belks had punished Genon for going out. She wished she could be by his side, but for now, there was only one thing she could do: report everything to her father. Maybe he will be able to help. When Heleis told her father what had happened, he was shocked. Still, he pointed out that although Marquis Belks was Genon's guardian, putting him under house arrest seemed excessive. He asked his daughter to leave the matter to him. Heleis asked anxiously if it would take long before the house arrest was lifted. It likely won't be resolved right away, her father replied. Until then, focus on your studies. With a gloomy face, Heleis agreed. Inside her heart, she wondered if there was really no way she would see Genon again. She shook her head, realizing she was worrying too much. She tried to convince herself that she was only worried because Genon might die. Still, she asked her father once more to please do something. Thinking to herself, she knew there was not much she could do right now, so she decided to focus on her studies since she had fallen far behind. The next day, when Heleis entered her class, she saw Sienna accidentally fall into someone's arms. She couldn't believe she would run into her here of all places. It felt like a bad and troubling sign. Sienna's face brightened the moment she saw Heleis. "Heleis, I've been wanting to see you," she said as she ran over. The teacher immediately told both of them to be quiet. Heleis quickly asked for permission to go get some water. On the way, she told Sienna she never expected them to be in the same class. Sienna complained, saying it must be a mistake that she was placed in the intermediate class. "It's been a while since Father allowed me to attend classes like this. Since we're paying so much money, I can't just quit." Inside her heart, she felt sad. She said she wanted to do her best, but things were not going well. Tears formed in her eyes as she apologized for causing trouble for her partner. Heleis watched her quietly and wondered how Sienna handled so much stress. She placed a hand on Sienna's shoulder and told her not to worry. It would be fine. She said she would teach her what she needed to understand. "Should we try it right now?" Heleis asked she knew Sienna needed to calm down and learn how to manage stress. Every time they met, Sienna always seemed tense. Heleis held Sienna's hand and taught her how to dance with a partner. To her surprise, Sienna did well. This made Heleis truly happy. Sienna thought to herself that everyone else always looked annoyed whenever she made a mistake, but Heleis was different. With her, Sienna felt confident. "I did it! I feel like I could dance even with my eyes closed," Sienna said excitedly. Heleis chuckled, thinking about how they had repeated the same steps for 30 whole minutes before finally getting it right. Suddenly, Sienna grabbed Heleis's hands and boldly asked if she would like to come over for dinner. "Today?" Heleis asked in surprise. Sienna nodded and said yes. Soma had told her to make sure she invited Heleis. Heleis said it was quite sudden. Inside her mind, she thought they were not that close yet. Sienna's eyes filled with tears as she asked if it was really a bad idea. Heleis thought about visiting Sienna's house. Maybe she could learn more about her likes and habits. She held Sienna's hands and said she wanted to become close to her too. Sienna could not hide her happiness. Sienna suggested they walk there since it wasn't far, but Heleis insisted they go by carriage because she had arrived in one. When they finally arrived at Sienna's home, Sienna asked nervously if it looked too simple. Heleis smiled gently. Inside her heart, she thought it was much smaller than she expected. Anyone could tell it belonged to a fallen noble family. Sienna led the way and pushed the door open, announcing that she was home. "Welcome back, Sienna," a young man said with a smirk. Sienna shouted in shock, asking why he was here. Heleis looked at him, wondering who he was. The boy had brown hair and red eyes. He sat on a chair with his legs crossed and casually asked if it was wrong to visit a friend's house. Then he asked who the girl beside Sienna was. Heleis replied calmly that she was Sienna's guest. Inside her mind, she was already certain. This was the Crown Prince Blake Darbell. "It's been a long time since I've seen anyone other than myself come to this house," Blake said with a smile. Blake Darbell was one of the main characters in the classic storyline. He was destined to become Sienna's partner and take down Duke Lionelic. He was the son of the first queen and the rightful heir to the kingdom. However, after the arrival of the second queen, he had been pushed into the shadows. A prince with a tragic fate. That was how the story described him. But Heleis knew it was all fake. There was no way he could keep the crown prince position with real power. In truth, the second queen was trying to control and use the first prince, who had gone astray, to ascend the throne. Blake was a man who did not let his rank define him. That was what drew Sienna to him, and eventually she fell for him. According to the story, he had been wandering around disguised as a commoner when he first met Sienna. Suddenly, Blake complained, saying Heleis had been properly invited. "So what does that make me?" he asked dramatically. "Given the situation," Heleis replied calmly, "it looks like you're an uninvited guest." The crown prince froze in shock. Sienna nodded in agreement, saying he had not been invited either. Heleis could not help thinking to herself, she's already so close to the male lead. Just then, Soma walked in, both hands filled with groceries. He stopped in surprise when he saw Lady Lorca and Mr. Bill inside the house. Soma immediately turned to Sienna and scolded her for not bringing tea out for the guests. "How many times have I told you not to forget proper manners as a noble?" he said sharply. Sienna tried to explain that they had just arrived. Meanwhile, Blake looked at Heleis and commented that, judging by her appearance, she's clearly high-born. So why was someone like her in a place like this? He added that Sienna is that girl everyone in society knows, the one people always pick on. Hearing this, Sienna froze. "What did you just say?" she asked in shock. With her arms folded, Heleis said she was not familiar with all this drama. "Who are you and what is your relationship with Sienna?" Heleis asked directly. Blake replied that it was a bit late to ask that now. "I'm Bill," he said with a smile, "just a low-ranking guy from the Information Guild. I met Sienna through a side job." He reached out his hand for a handshake. Heleis was shocked for a moment, then instantly used her fan to lightly tap his hand instead, as she introduced herself. "Like you said, I'm a highborn lady, so I'll skip the details," Heleis said mischievously. Blake smirked and said she was the first person who had ever never said that to him. Sienna quickly shouted that her lady was very refined and charming. Blake leaned closer and whispered to Sienna why she brought someone like Heleis along. Sienna frowned and asked if he had a problem with that, calling him out as the dinner-stealing sneak. "Calling your friend a dinner thief, huh?" Blake snapped angrily. Soma cut in, telling everyone to calm down and come enjoy some tea. Heleis felt frustrated. They were being far too loud. Tea was served, and Blake looked at his cup with delight, saying it was actually his first time having tea in this house. "There's no chance to sit down and drink tea in the Northern Forest," he said teasingly. Sienna asked why he would even go to the Northern Forest, knowing how dangerous it was. Blake smiled and replied that those were the only kinds of jobs a low-ranking man like him could get. Heleis glared at him as she sipped her tea, thinking to herself that he was a terrible liar. Blake then reached into his bag and pulled something out, saying he had found something useful. "We've got a fairies tear in our hands," he said casually. Heleis was shocked when she saw it. Inside her mind, it did not look like the real one. "The fairies tear isn't supposed to look like that," Sienna said, confused. Blake nodded and said he knew. "The real one is part of the Queen's collection, but the one he had is a fake. That means the real fairies tear is still in the palace." "A fake?" Heleis asked. "Then where did you get it?" Blake replied that it was found in the ruins of a dragon's nest. Heleis remembered hearing that rare items brought by traveling merchants were often discovered after dragons moved their nests. Even if it was fake, that could still mean it was a powerful cheat item. Heleis smiled to herself. With this in her hands, she could control the ending however she wanted. Seeing the look in her eyes, Blake pointed out that there was something strange about it. Heleis asked for another cup of tea. Sienna went to get it, leaving Heleis alone with Blake. "About that necklace," Heleis began. Blake interrupted, saying he already knew she would bring it up. He smiled and said he knew she wanted to buy it, but since it was a rare item, he wasn't sure what price to put on it. Heleis smiled sweetly and asked what he was talking about. She reminded him that selling fake royal items was illegal and that she should be thankful she wasn't reporting him. "Prince Blake Darble," she said, calling him by his full name. Blake froze in shock. He tried to laugh it off and asked what she was talking about. Heleis asked if she wanted her to properly greet him as the kingdom's sunshine. Blake's expression changed instantly. He angrily demanded to know who she was and how she knew his identity. Heleis smirked, said his face was quite recognizable and that he clearly looked like a noble. The truth was that no one truly knows the Crown Prince's face, which is why Blake had lived freely without getting caught since now. If the Queen finds out you're doing things like this outside the palace, it could get very messy. Blake asked if she was threatening him. Angrily, he threw the fairy's tear toward her, saying he was not even interested in things like that anyway. Heleis caught it, stunned. She could not believe she had just gotten shut 11 so easily. This really was her lucky day. Genon could be saved. Blake watched her quietly, thinking that she knew he was the Crown Prince and did not even flinch. This girl clearly had guts. "Viscount Lorca's daughter," Blake said slowly. "Just remember, nothing in this world is free." Heleis was shocked. She asked how he knew she came from a Viscount family. Blake replied calmly that her father was the castle's steward, of course. "So what do you want?" Heleis asked boldly. Blake smiled and said he would think about it. For now, she just needed to remember that she owed him one. Heleis realized instantly that the situation had turned against her. Sienna soon returned with the tea and asked what they had been talking about. Blake replied casually that it was nothing important. Heleis drank her tea, thinking to herself, he is a prince who never appears at public events. There is nothing she needs to be afraid of. Heleis had no idea that this encounter would lead to a huge incident a month later. Lady Lorca received an invitation stating that she had been selected as the Crown Prince's partner, Blake Darble, for the upcoming birthday party of Prince Aster Darble, which would be held in 10 days. Everyone in her household, including herself, was shocked. Count Lorca asked Heleis what she had done to receive an invitation from Prince Blake. Of course, she denied knowing anything about it. At first, her lady had secretly hoped that when she opened the envelope, it would be a letter from Genon. It had been over a month since they last saw each other. Even if he was stuck somewhere, he should have at least written to her. But she had heard nothing. Heleis suggested turning down the invitation, but her father refused. He said that since she would be the Crown Prince's partner, they needed to prepare properly. "Let's get everything in perfect order," her father said firmly. She couldn't believe how impossible he was. Heleis remembered Blake's smile from the last time they met and couldn't help but think that she really did owe him this much. Maybe she should just return the favor. She began thinking of a way to attend the party without standing out too much. 10 days later, the day of the party finally arrived. Blake came in his royal carriage to pick Heleis up from her home. When he stepped down, her lady felt like she was going blind. He was shining, well-dressed, and almost too bright to look at as he greeted her. Heleis quickly looked away, saying she didn't feel great. Blake asked what was wrong. She told him she did not like being the center of attention. He replied that it didn't sound like her. They entered the carriage together, and she told him the necklace situation was an exception. Blake, still smiling, told him this was a rare chance, so they should get along because he really liked her. I don't recall doing anything to be liked. Are you into the type who's a bit greedy? She asked, confused. He chuckled and said he liked how honest she was. Heleis thought to herself that she had assumed Blake stayed away from public events because the royal family was suppressing him, but seeing how relaxed he was now, it was nothing like what she expected. She wondered if she could get through this party without any incident. When they entered the party hall, no one paid them much attention since the crown prince's face was not widely known. Blake glanced at her and asked what they were supposed to do now. "This is my first time at a party like this, so I'm not sure," he said. "I said that I also did not attend events like this often." Blake asked if she was the type to stay quietly in a corner. "I said I didn't have many friends who were invited." "I don't have any friends here besides you, so let's stick together," he said with a smirk. She asked if they were already friends. Blake leaned closer and whispered that if she expected more than that, then it would be too much. As Heleis glanced toward a corner of the hall, she suddenly froze. She saw Genon. "Why are you here?" she asked in shock. Blake smiled and said, "Isn't he the type that avoids events like this?" Genon noticed that Heleis was holding on to Blake, and his expression darkened. Heleis felt confused. She wondered if he had just glared at her. Blake offered to introduce them. "This is my partner, young lady Heleis." Genon replied coldly that he already knew her and that she was one of his retainers. Blake turned to Heleis and said that he and Genon were childhood friends. Genon cut in sharply, saying he did not know what Blake was talking about. Heleis wanted badly to talk to Genon about the house arrest issue, but she decided to wait until they were alone. "It's rare to see you here," Blake said to Genon. "Where's your gourd?" Genon replied that they were somewhere around, but he was not quite sure. Blake smirked. "You're the same as ever." He then told Heleis that Genon might seem cold, but he's not a bad person. Blake placed a hand on Heleis' shoulder and asked her to dance. Genon's glare sharpened instantly. Blake suggested they go dance instead of standing in one place. Heleis imagined the expressions on people's faces if they found out that the crown prince was dancing with Viscountess Lorca. Blake grabbed her hand. "Let's dance." Then he bowed slightly and said, "Princess Heleis?" She couldn't believe he called her that, as if this strange role was not already enough. She told him not to say such reckless words, but Blake only smiled and pulled her along, telling her not to be so picky. Music began to play, and the two of them danced among the crowd. Heleis quietly mumbled to herself that this was her first time actually dancing, and she was already out of breath. While they danced, Blake asked how she knew Genon. Heleis replied that they had met as playmates. Blake smirked to himself, thinking he had guessed right. That sharp look Genon had earlier, was it because he was partnered with Heleis? At first, I thought he was angry because Aster forced him to come. Heleis asked what he meant by forced. Blake explained that his younger brother enjoyed lively gatherings, and for events like this, the Duke Lionelic was indispensable. Because of that, Marquis Belzix must have felt obligated to attend as well. The song ended, and Blake smiled, suggesting they dance again. Heleis asked if he was not tired. He told her the next song is already starting, so they might as well continue. Just then, someone interrupted and asked if he was the crown prince. When Blake turned, it immediately drew everyone's attention. Of course, the very thing Heleis feared happened. She thought to herself that people should not see her rejecting a dance from the crown prince, so she told Blake they should continue dancing. But just then, Genon appeared and separated the two of them, leaving Blake confused. Heleis wondered what Genon was doing. Suddenly, Genon told her if she wanted to keep dancing, then she should dance with him. This man was openly showing his jealousy, and we love it. Blake smiled and said he couldn't simply snatch away his dance partner. Genon replied that she was one of his retainers. Blake calmly pointed out that who she danced with was her own choice. Heleis smirked, wondering why they had suddenly put her in such a difficult position. She didn't know what to do now. Blake was clearly the crown prince, and now everyone knew it. People would talk no matter what she chose.
If she danced with Blake, it would cause rumors, but if she danced with Genon, Duke Lionelic, it would also become the talk of high society. Neither choice was simple. So, the two boys asked at the same time, who will you dance with? Heleis hesitated, thinking she really had to choose one. Just as she was about to decide, an announcement rang out. Prince Aster had arrived. Everyone turned at once. When they turned back to Heleis, she was already standing ahead of them, calling for them to follow her and greet the prince together. She had escaped the tight situation, all thanks to Prince Aster's arrival. Prince Aster smiled as he looked around, unable to hide his joy at seeing so many people gathered to celebrate his birthday. Standing beside him, Marquis Belks spotted Heleis downstairs with Genon by her side. He smirked and said that the face looked familiar. Aster chuckled and said that he seemed very concerned about his nephew, even while standing up here with him. Belks replied that it was not like that, but Aster laughed and said that he was clearly still watching him, so there was no need to deny it. Marquis Belks glared and said that was not at all the case. I was simply admiring God's little lamb, he added. Did he just refer to Heleis as a lamb? That's crazy. Heleis, meanwhile, was happy with how perfectly everything was timed. As His Majesty the Emperor stepped forward to address the crowd and thank them for coming to celebrate with his son, Heleis thought to herself, this was the perfect moment to sneak away. If she left now, no one would even notice. The moment Heleis entered the hallway, she mumbled to herself that it felt so empty since everyone was at the party. She suddenly felt strange, saying, it seems like I'm heading in the wrong direction and there's no one around to ask for directions. Heleis walked further and reached a place that made her pause. She couldn't help but say that the area looked completely unmanaged. Is this place abandoned or something? She asked softly. She noticed a circular opening above and smiled, saying she couldn't believe a place like this existed inside the palace. Looking around, she saw strange markings on the walls. Curious, she stepped closer and touched them happily, only to realize they weren't random scribbles at all. This is a mural, she said, both surprised and amazed. Heleis wondered what the painting meant and why such an important place had been left neglected. Just then, someone suddenly shouted, "Hey!" Heleis freaked out. The person demanded to know who she was. She immediately dropped to the ground, shut her eyes tightly, and begged for her life to be spared, thinking to herself that she really did not want to die twice. When she slowly opened her eyes, she froze in shock. Standing in front of her was Her Majesty, the Queen. If you recognize my face, then you must be one of the invited guests at Aster's birthday party, the Queen said with a gentle smile. Heleis quickly bowed, thinking to herself that she never imagined she would meet Queen Isabel, someone so elusive even in the game. She asked why Her Majesty was here. The Queen, in turn, asked if she had entered this place without knowing where she was. Yes, I was just walking around and got lost, Heleis replied honestly. The Queen sighed and asked what would she have done if she had met someone else instead. Heleis asked if this was a restricted area. Her Majesty replied that it was, and that only one person is allowed here. She added that even she, the Queen, should not be here either. Heleis was shocked. There was a place in the palace where even the Queen couldn't enter? What kind of place is this? Heleis asked carefully. The Queen replied that this was where the noble Crown Prince, His Highness Blake, resided. Heleis was stunned to hear that the Crown Prince stayed here. Looking around again, she felt uneasy. This place didn't seem fit for anyone to live in. Is this really where Blake lives? She wondered. Her thoughts grew darker. Does this mean he is being bullied in the palace? She began to think this might be the reason he often disguised himself and spent so much time outside the palace. Seeing Heleis's expression, the Queen chuckled and said that she truly wore her heart on her sleeve. One could easily tell what she was thinking just by looking at her face. Heleis quickly apologized. The Queen smiled and said it was fine, explaining that she understood her reaction since she did not know the circumstances. The Crown Prince's residence is a top secret, even within the palace, the Queen said, and yet here I am talking about it. She smiled softly and added that perhaps it was because she felt a sense of calm from Heleis. Hearing that, Heleis felt a strange sense of familiarity. That line felt too familiar, like she had heard it before. Then it hit her. It was a line from the game, a line that only appeared when a character's favorability was maxed out. But why was the Queen saying it to her when they had just met? Was this a good thing or a bad thing? In Princess Sienna, having high grace and sociability allowed players to meet high-ranking characters. That exact line from the Queen only appeared after developing those stats over a long time. Heleis knew there was no way her stats could be that high at just 14 years old. So why did she get that line? The queen then asked her name. Heleis bowed and introduced herself. The queen praised her, saying that she had very beautiful eyes, and when the light hit them, they shone like stunning gold. Heleis chuckled and said her eyes were just plain brown. Queen Isabel told her that she had the gift of putting people at ease. Then she invited Heleis to sit so they could chat for a bit. Heleis sat down with the queen. Isabel explained that she had exaggerated when she called it the Crown Prince's residence. It was actually a place where he often played as a child. Heleis pointed out that Her Majesty must care deeply for the Crown Prince. Inside her heart, she thought that maybe the rumors about the queen supporting the second prince were not true after all. "I am truly blessed to serve a holy presence," Isabel said softly. Heleis was confused. Holy presence? What did that mean? She felt that she needed to learn more. She didn't know if she would ever get another chance to sit with the queen like this and talk so freely. Just then, a maid entered and informed Her Majesty that the Emperor had summoned her. Heleis felt annoyed at the interruption. The queen stood up, smiled warmly at Heleis, and asked her to forget everything she had heard that day. With that, the queen left, and Heleis was left alone with countless unanswered questions. The way the queen quoted lines from the game and spoke about Blake left Heleis deeply unsettled. She had thought she knew everything about this game, but now she realized she did not. Could this be an important clue to ending the game? Feeling uneasy and overwhelmed with information she needed to investigate, Heleis finally left the place. This is where this part of the story ends. If you love this story and you want us to continue, please comment the protagonist's name, Heleis.